Iyer. He is MSc Biotech from University of Madras. Pradeep has played a important role in development, transfer and launch of 6 different biotherapeutic products which range from glycosylated proteins to monoclonal antibodies, and he has been in the industry for more than 16 years. I think 6 products are quite a lot actually, because in the lifetime you actually see 1 or 2 maybe passing, so it's wonderful. Pradeep, thanks. I welcome him on the dais and then ask him to present. Thank you, Pradeep.
Am I audible? So Dr. Navratna has given us a very challenging equation of developing a biotherapeutic product with pharmaceutical timelines of 20 minutes. I'll try to do justice to that. What we'll try to see here is, continuing with what Dr. Ashutosh has presented, we'll get into a different mode of structural assessment. I'll be talking more about sarcodichroism, and we'll also touch base on size exclusion chromatography, particularly from aggregation point of view. So just to understand, today we'll be understanding the different tools of biophysical characterization that is required for studying a biomolecule. We'll get deeper into circular dichroism in terms of its principle, the role in product understanding and characterizations. We will also look into the aggregation tools and principles, and we'll dig deeper into SCCs and how it can help in product development as well. And I'll introduce the concept of orthogonality, which is a very important aspect of regulatory submissions and biotherapeutic characterizations. Before we move forward, I just want to point out that almost all regulatory agencies talk about higher order structure characterizations apart from biophysical and biophysicochemical characterization. So if you see right from the harmonized ICS to EMA specific to monoclonal antibody to general EMA, FDA, even CDSCO talks about these guidelines, these HOS molecules. So it is mandatory now, which was not 10 years back, but now the philosophy is changing around the structural characterization of molecules. So these are various tools that I have listed down which can be used but not limited to. There are many things happening as we speak. So these are basic tools which are generally used to characterize the biomolecules. Usually you would see as a part of the dossier submission within your organizations, or if you see the literature available on the web. So it all depends on what do you want. You can have a global understanding of the higher order structure, or a local understanding, depending on which you will describe what analysis to do. So we just saw the NMR. I'll try to do some justice to the CD as well. And Dr. Dama is going to speak about AUC, so we will understand all aspects of characterization. Before we move on, because I see the public is also academic in nature, so and people who have just started using CD, I just want to very quickly in layman terms tell you what a CD would do. A CD would generally have a light source where you select a wavelength, it goes, hits your sample, goes to a detector, you get a CD spectrum. But then this sounds familiar. Spectrophotometer conventional also does the same. So what would be different in a CD spectrophotometer? Nothing but it adds a polarizer and a PEM. So what it does is the polarizer is going to convert your light into a linear polarized light, and then the PEM would convert it into a circular polarized light. So all the compounds that we are detecting, including biotherapeutics, these are chiral in nature. So they would absorb at the left as well as the right circular polarization. So the difference in the left and right circular would lead to an elliptical model. So this ellipticity is what we are measuring when we do the CD. And this measurement of ellipticity with respect to wavelength gives us a CD profile. So when you read at a far UV wavelengths, you are talking about the secondary structure of the molecule. When you are reading at the near UV, which is basically because of the aromatic amino acids and the disulfide bonds, you are talking about the tertiary structure. And we generally don't do this within the scope of CD, but this is a normal UV visible scan which you can do in a spectrophotometer as well. So now that this basics is clear, I want to introduce you to certain data sets of CD, which is very important when you develop a CD methodology, when you characterize your molecule, and these are certain pointers that we should keep in mind when we are evaluating or developing a product with respect to CD. So why I label this as specificity is any spectrophotometric method is always questioned on the specificity aspect of it, because it's generally not very specific in nature, like an HPLC or an ELISA. So what we have tried to do here is we have tried to demonstrate a different class of antibodies ranging from IgG1 to IgG4, including chimeric and humanized antibody, to just see how it would differentiate in a CD spectrum. So what you see here is a blown up version of the two regions of alpha and beta wavelengths. So you see that there are differences in the signal by noise ratio and how it, how the detector is sensing the signals. But if you now try to quantify this, you will see very minor differences in the alpha beta sheets and random coils. Now, what are the significance of these differences? We will try to decode this when we move along. We also have to understand and judge if this is really specific in nature. What we have seen is a CD might become specific in nature if you club it with the near UV CD, which is talking about the tertiary structure. So if you now see both of these in conjunction, you will realize that the IgG1 and IgG2 and IgG4 have a very distinct profile in the tertiary structure determination in the CD. So when you look at both of it together now, yes, there is a level of specificity that we can talk about. Also, when you are doing circular dichroism, taking the same example in the previous slide, the algorithms that we are using to evaluate the secondary structures also will change the kind of impact you see on the results. So if you see, we have just tried using 3 different algorithms. Some software are available as a free source online, some come with the system, some are paid softwares. So we see that different softwares uses different algorithm and it changes the, the quantification of the alpha, beta sheets, helix and coils that we are doing. Now what is interesting here to see is, we cannot assign an absolute value of alpha and beta now because of these variabilities within contour. And that is why whenever you see a CD data, you will never see a standalone CD data. You will always see 2 molecules together because it is always going to be comparative or relative in nature. We have also seen that the wavelength that you select for determining the secondary structure will change what you get the output as. So these are critical parameters, and because these are very important when you are going to develop your product, when you use it for characterizations, and Dr. Asutosh also mentioned, we'll see some data here as well. So depending on what you select, you will understand the nature of your product, and then maybe you can even correlate it to the binding and efficacy as someone just asked. So the next question in any methodology is the linearity of the method. So is the method linear in nature? So if you see the blown up version, it looks pretty linear. So it is a difference of 0.05 mg per ml. We have to understand that the difference of 0.05 mg per ml is very, very less or specific for a spectrophotometric method. So we are talking about less than 1% variability in a method. And for MAPS, with such high concentration molecules and which we need to dilute as well with dilution errors, this is generally going to be overlapping. So we are talking about variabilities or the reproducibility or the repeatability of the method being in this range. Although this is precisely measured for understanding the linearity. If you see here, it seems that everything is perfectly fine, it's linear in nature. But again, when you quantify, you start seeing a difference in the alpha beta values that is assigned by the software. If you see closely, there is a certain saturation point at concentration above which the values become erroneous in nature. So this is a very important aspect when we are developing a CD spectra or when we are studying CD, which is known as the photomultiplier tube voltage, the HT. This depends on the detector, how much light it is getting. So if the detector is getting very less light, that means the absorbance is very less, then the results that it is going to get is going to be very erroneous, and it is not going to be representing the molecule in question, but it is going to be sound all around. So that is why there is a thumb rule that at least you should target that the ST should be less than 600. 700 is the standard industry practice, but we have seen that 600 gives you a good enough profile where you can interpret the results as well. I want to just introduce you to how CD can help in product developments as well, because till now, until 2 to 3 years from now, people were using CD only in terms of comparative assessments, biosimilarity assessments, and just proving that the molecule is similar or dissimilar to the innovator. So what we have seen is it has a very big role to play when you do a lyophilization development. Although we have not presented all the profiles due to obvious reasons, but I have presented here the profiles which is after the finalization of the lyophilization process, which is also studied. So the structural aspect is also studied during the lyophilization process, because we need to remember that when you do lyophilization of a molecule, it is going to undergo sublimation, it is going to undergo freezing. So these are molecular level changes which can happen, which can impact the structure of the molecule. So that is why it is very important that even structurally evaluate your process development. So lyophilization is one such example. I also try to present to you a pegylation, which is also a very common process that we do. So even pegylation can change the structural integrity of the molecule because of the nature of the peg, because of the absorbativity, because of the blockages of the sites available. Because we are in tertiary, if we're talking about aromatic amino acid, the availability of aromatic amino acid to give these profiles. These are all very important. Now the similar kind of conjugation, but instead of pegylation, I'll try to show you some data with a toxin conjugation. So the pegylation and toxin conjugation which we are seeing here, both are at the lysine sites. So the site of conjugation is same. But if you look at the profiles, so when you conjugate a toxin, now your CD spectra is starting to change. And you see such a very distinct spectra change in the tertiary structure. So a pegylation was not impacting the structural changes as much is the toxin. Because toxin again is a small molecule, it is a protein drug interaction that we are talking about, which is also a very important aspect of reading the CD spectra as such. We have also, like Dr. Ashutosh presented, which is a very basic aspect of any kind of characterization tool, that you do force degradations and you see the capability of your methodology in terms of identifying subtle changes. So we have done some experiments what is presented here is the temperature and UV stress. If you see, there are changes when you stress the sample against control. But what is also worth seeing here and what is also worth interpreting here is the temperature stress and the UV stress for the same molecule are giving the similar pattern of structural change. It's not a different structural change, it is a similar pattern of structural change. Of course, these are all qualitative in nature, the assessments, and so we cannot dig deeper into the quantitative change in these molecules. But these are certain elements which is very, very necessary when you say that you have a molecule which is biosimilar in nature. So you have to study at this extent as well. The same aspect of temperature, if you see between molecules, some molecules are more stable at the same temperature stress apart from the other molecule. We see this generally in other physicochemical techniques of SEC or for aggregation, for charges, for glycosylation, but we also should evaluate this deeper into the structural aspect of it. This will pave way to stability assessments and role of structurals in stability assessment as well, which the industry is now slowly going towards, which was not the case 10 years back. So if we are able to do all this, then it depends on how critical the CD becomes for your product development and characterizations. But to make it critical, our objective should be clearly defined. So we cannot just have a couple of scans and then start characterizing the scans. We should be objective driven on what we are trying to understand or read in the characterization or in the development. Then it will become easier for us to interpret those scans. Having said that, any assessment can be only deemed viable if it is qualified or it is fit for purpose, because we saw different changes. We saw 2 to 3% changes in the alpha helices and beta sheets and all. So are these 2 to 3% changes liable to be called as differences? It all will depend on how robust your method is, how qualified or fit for purpose your method is. So there are again multiple schools of thought for doing the fit for purpose of qualifications, which we can discuss in the panel or we can discuss anytime. The most basic question that we all are here to answer is CD really a very powerful tool? Yes, if all this is taken care of. But CD cannot be an independent tool, so as any other techniques in the biotherapeutic characterization. So, and that is why we will talk about orthogonality and importance of orthogonality. As we already established, a CD cannot be independently evaluated. Maybe there will be future developments where we will be able to get that, because there are developments happening in the software field of the CD so that we can interpret the data in a much accurate way and we get more information than we are getting right now. But as of now, it is a comparative evaluation and inclined more towards qualitative, more than quantitative. So hopefully moving forward, we will reach there as well. So I want to shift gears and slightly take you to a different world of aggregation now. Just to make you understand, the CD or the structural and aggregation can be related in some cases. Again, it depends on what kind of characterization and what kind of assessments we are doing. For aggregation, you know that it is a very, very important and key tool in any submissions, in any biotherapeutic development. Not only biotherapeutic, but it is important for peptides, it is important for vaccines, it is a bare minimal essentiality. And one of the reasons why that is because of the immunogenic nature of the aggregates, which is not seen in a very good light in the regulatory world. So what I have tried to do is I have tried to explain you that how we can categorize an aggregate. So aggregate can be categorized into different classes. You can categorize the aggregate as per their size, as per the nature of their aggregate, its reversibility, its structure, how it was formed, its morphology. So a particular aggregate can be categorized into all of these. You can have an 80 nanometer aggregate which is multimeric in nature, which was formed because of structural disintegrity, but it is also reversible in nature. So depending on how you categorize your aggregates, you will define how you want to characterize those aggregates and how you want to use them in your product development. So again, people who have been working, my industry friends would know most of the causes of the aggregations, but we will just go through some of the very, very important and bare minimum reasons, and we'll also try to see some data around it in the subsequent slides. A very important aspect is high concentration. Nowadays we see that the monoclonal antibodies which are coming up under development, under innovation, under biosimilarity cadre are increasing in concentration to a very high extent for the benefit of decrease in fill volumes, for the benefit of lesser injection volumes, pain factors. So there are a lot of aspects involved, but the concentrations are slowly and steadily increasing, which also creates a complexity in the aggregate formation. Storage temperatures and duration at which that is stored or can also impact. So in short, we are talking about the stability at different temperatures as well. Chemical and physical changes in terms of pH, in terms of stress. The handling, mere handling, taking your sample from one place to another, if it is not done properly, also can cause aggregates, which can cause disruption in the assessment that we do. Freeze thaw is one way, because most of our bulk substances are frozen in nature, and we have to keep thawing it for the drug product filling. So that is an important aspect of aggregate generation which we should study. Agitation, there are shipments happening all around. So supply chain is tight, but it is not completely under your control. So any kind of agitation can lead to aggregate formation, which we also have to characterize. And more important, these are newer understanding that even a container closure can impact your aggregations, because we have seen if you store a particular kind of protein in a single-use bag against a PETG bottle, against a glass bottle, it can change how it impacts your aggregation pattern. Various tools where you can evaluate aggregation depending on visual to particle based. We will be speaking more about the size exclusion chromatographic tool, but then most of these we see in the second part of the slide. These are all almost compulsory methods which we should be analyzing for aggregate assessment for regulatory submission. Right from page to MFI is also expected nowadays. So just to dig a little bit deeper into how an aggregation can impact your process development. So if you see this profile, you clearly can see that the sample A is less aggregated than sample B. But now, if the same sample I were to evaluate using different columns, if you see the sample A's behavior in different columns is still the same, but the sample B behavior is starting to change at the aggregate and at the low molecular weight level. So what this shows us is not only the column selection is important for effective product development, but also the type of sample that we are selecting to develop an appropriate SEC method is very, very important in feedbacks for the process development. So if you see, the aggregates are not changing in the sample 1, but the aggregates are clearly changing in the sample 2, which is a better tool. So if you would have developed your process using this method versus this method, you would have had a very different quality product at the end. Another aspect I just want to show you is look at these three profiles. They look similar just in terms of maybe the percentages of aggregates are different. But when you look closer, these are various forms of aggregates. And this is one of the most non-desirable aspect to have in our product, that you have any additional form which is not present in the innovator molecule. So these have to be looked into very, very deeply, and the SEC tool has the power to look into it, which can be used for effective product development and removals as well. Like in the CD, like in any method, you would see force degradations to understand the capability of the method. Why I am projecting here is just to show you that even a change in 1 pH unit can lead to such a high aggregation profile. That means the mechanism of action is so much dependent on the pH. That is why the classification. If you see, the different changes in UV light and visible light can give rise to different forms of aggregates, which is also equally important for you to understand your process and process characterization. So is the case with temperature. So if you see, if we are elevating at a 45 degree, you are getting an additional form of aggregate, which was not present. So you would think that your product is fine, but when you are stressing, you are seeing a different form, which may show up in a later stage in the stability, maybe over 2 years or 3 years of time, and you cannot wait that long to understand that your product was not at par. One interesting observation that we have seen, and some of my friends who have worked with this molecule, which sadly I can't name, would understand this phenomenon. This is a normal chromatogram of this molecule at 5 degrees, and the general concept is that when you freeze the molecule, it is stable for a longer time. But this particular molecule on freezing is aggregating a lot. What is even more astonishing and mind-boggling and a good scientific problem to solve is, when you decrease the temperature further to -80, it gives the exact same profile as you would do in a 228. So it's only the -20 that is aggregating this molecule, but not lower temperatures than that. This may be because of various reasons of formulation, of the concentration, of the buffering capability of the product itself, the nature of aggregates that are being formed. So these are important observations. This can also help you in deciding what should be your storage temperature. So -20 is out of the question. So it can either be a 228 or a -80. Then these are all product development calls. Storing it in 228 and the DP also being in 228 is a different ball game altogether when you assess stability as opposed to -80 and 228. I will just end in 2 minutes. This is just to showcase, to give a lead to Dr. Dhamma. SEC and AUC are generally seen as orthogonal methods. Yes, of course, but both have their own underlying principles and capabilities. If you see, the multimer resolution capability of AUC is much higher than SEC, because the fractionation of SEC is not as accurate as AUC would. But AUC has a disadvantage that it cannot do the low molecular weights for you as effectively as an SEC or a CE would do. So these are some orthogonal techniques which have to be also evaluated with a pinch of salt in its totality. So if you look at SEC, AUC, it does not talk about these smaller pre-peak shoulders or post-peak shoulders. So maybe, but SEC mols can solve this if you get a good resolution in the SEC itself. Just to quickly tell you what an orthogonality means, that you should always use more than one technique. It is just because different techniques may have different principles, like we just saw for the case of AUC and SEC. It may tell you a different story about your molecule, which is very important. The regulatory is expecting at least more than one quantitative assessments, but it is always a challenge and a debate where the structural assessment is concerned, because structural assessments are mostly qualitative in nature. For example, in the higher order structure, the FTIR is very strong with the beta sheets assessment, and CD has its strength towards the alpha helix assessment. So if you club both together, you can prove similarity in a much more effective way. And everything depends on how you interpret the residual changes after all of this. I want to close it by just showing that these are the various submissions, which is available in the open source web of different organizations for EMA or FDA submissions. If you see, certain tests like CED, FTIR, DSE are bare minimum and basic. Everyone has to submit this, and it is expected by the regulatory agencies. As we go towards more newer techniques which is being adapted now, I think the school of thought will change maybe in another couple of years time, maybe in 2025 workshop, all of them will be tick marked here. I would thank you for patiently listening and sorry for the speed because of the time constraint. I want to acknowledge my team who has helped me build this slide and able to present to you here before. Thank you. Thank you.